I'm Saul Kirsch of Double Alpha Academy, and in this short clip I want to show you how to customize and make adjustments to your Racemaster holster in case you need it to fit your particular gun. Now the Racemaster holster really depends on a very tight and very precise fit with the front end of the trigger guard of the gun. Basically the holster is gripped right here on the front of its trigger guard, and the dimension over here is very critical for the correct function of the holster. Now we found that most of the manufacturers are very consistent with this dimension, and so when we make a model for the STI, it'll work with pretty much all of the STI guns out there. We've tested them with the aluminum STI frames and found the dimension to be the same. So the same STI insert will work for the plastic frame as well as the new aluminum frames. We did, however, find that the SV guns, the steel and aluminum frames, are slightly narrower on the front end, and to prevent the gun from rocking around, we made a custom insert block for them just to make sure that those guns are held snugly the way they need to be. In some cases, you may want to do some fine-tuning and some adjustment yourself. For instance, if you had a holster for a CZ and the insert blocks are designed for the SP01, and you wanted to use it with a CZ Tactical Sport, the Tactical Sport is very similar in dimension, but the dimension here on the front of the trigger guard, that critical point for our holster design, is just slightly wider than the SP01. It's just slightly bigger by perhaps half a millimeter. And what will happen is as you insert the Tactical Sport into the CZ SP01 holster, the fit will be too tight, or the gun will not go all the way down into position, preventing the safety from activating. You can easily adjust that within just a few minutes and a Dremel tool and get it to work with the gun type that you want. Another similar situation could come up if you have an STI holster and you'd like to use it with a SPS frame. Now the SPS frame is very similar to the STI frame in dimensions, but the front end of the trigger guard, once again, this critical point here is just slightly wider by perhaps half a millimeter to a millimeter. So what you'd need to do is just a little bit of customization to get this holster to work with the SPS. A similar problem might come up with various Glocks. Through experimentation, we've come to realize that the Glocks have many different dimensions on the front end of the trigger guard. There's a little bit of inconsistency between various models of Glocks, but even in the same model, there seem to be generations of molds being used for the production of these guns, which is understandable considering the high volume of guns that were manufactured. But we've tried various Glock 17s and Glock 19s and Glock 34s and found variants in the dimension of the front end of the trigger guard. The only way really for us to deal with this is to keep the dimensions tight. The fit has to be precise, so we kept it on the small side to work with the smallest Glocks we found. And then if, when you order your Glock holster, you find that it's too tight on your gun, you'll need to make the adjustment that I will demonstrate right now. So in this tutorial, what I'll do is I will take an STI holster and I will get it to fit this SPS frame. The process will be exactly the same whether you want to adjust an SP01 holster to work with a Tactical Sport CZ, or whether you want to adjust your Glock if it may be too tight for the particular gun that you have. So the first thing you'll do is you'll dismantle, take out your insert, and you'll also want to remove the slide lock, because the sliding lock is the part that you actually want to work on to adjust to fit the holster. So again, using a screwdriver here, we'll take out this long M3 screw, and then the sliding lock can be removed only upwards, so it comes out the top part over here. Now here you'll see that tooth that I was describing earlier on, and this is where the stability of the gun comes in the holster. This tooth is precisely machined to hold the trigger guard of the gun with no rocking and no movement, and this fit is what gives the holster its stability. So you really want to make sure that the fit is accurate. Now if I try to fit the SP01 into that tooth, I can immediately see that it's going to be way too tight and I need to remove some material. Now while you're working on your sliding lock and adjusting it to fit the trigger guard of the gun, it is important that you position it correctly. How far and where precisely does the sliding block need to sit on the gun? Well, the easiest thing to do is to insert the gun into your block, like so, line it up on the back, and then using a marker, a white marker, a whiteboard marker, just make a couple of lines on the holster trigger guard so that once you remove the block, you now know where this part needs to be positioned and how you need to make it fit. And I can see that I need to remove just a little bit of material to make this fit this grip. Now you can use a Dremel or you can use a file. A Dremel perhaps would be easier. You can remove material from the top tooth or the bottom one. Either one will work. The top tooth might be easier to machine simply because it's narrower. It isn't as high as the lower one. When you do work with your Dremel tool, try and keep it straight. Don't angle it sideways. You want to get a nice 90-degree vertical wall as it is machined originally and just slightly adjust its position. So using this tool now, I'll get to work for a couple of minutes and just reshape this tooth. Shouldn't take more than a minute or two to get it to fit the SPS frame. So after just about a minute of working with my Dremel tool, I'm able to slightly modify the shape of the upper tooth, just make it a little bit wider so the notch accommodates the SP01 trigger guard. Now you want to do this gradually. Remove a little bit of material, check it on the gun, remove a little bit more, check it again, because you don't want to make it too loose. You see, now if I take this sliding lock and I try it on my STI gun, I'm going to see that there's way too much space and it's going to wiggle around. This tooth will no longer hold an STI gun very stable in the holster, but it is a tight fit on my SPS frame. So now if I reassemble the sliding lock, and I can just run a little test here by hand just to make sure that the gun goes all the way down and positions correctly for the safety, and I can see that sure enough it does. I return that little M3 screw, which is the external lever for moving the slide lock if you need it. You want to leave that protruding out 5 or 6 millimeters. Replace your little aluminum plate into its position. Insert the block into the holster. Take your tension screw and put it through that plate and into position. A couple of turns to hold it on the nut. Your M4 screws go back into place on the back. Just lightly tighten them, no need to apply too much force. And now this holster, which previously was an STI holster, and you can see that if I insert my STI pistol in it now, there seems to be, and there is a lot of movement between the gun and the holster. And this is because that sliding lock tooth is now much larger than it was before. But if I take the SPS frame that I've used now to adjust it, I can see that it goes all the way down, your safety lever works, and the gun is rock solid, no movement at all. So this is how you'd adjust an STI holster to suit an SPS frame. Or in case of the CZ-SP01 holster, which you want to use with a tactical sport, you'd need to do that operation there. You wouldn't have to remove as much. The amount of material I removed now was about between 0.5 millimeter and 1 millimeter to fit the gun. On the tactical sport, you would remove less. And then again, with the Glocks, in some cases you may find you need to remove just a little bit of material in this manner to make your Glock lock into place correctly. Remember, you want to do this gradually. Don't rush it. Take your Dremel tool or file, remove just a little bit of the Delrin plastic, check it on your gun, remove a little bit more if necessary. If you remove too much, the holster will no longer hold the gun as stable as it should. Once you get a nice, snug, tight fit, that's all you need to do. Remember that those two teeth of the sliding block slide out sideways from the trigger guard. They don't rotate, so they don't need any extra clearance. They just have to be able to fit onto the trigger guard, and then you have the fit that you need. So this is how you customize the sliding lock in your Racemaster holster to adjust for slight variances in gun types or models.